Hey everybody, welcome to the Friday 3D Printing Community Hangout. Tonight we're joined by a whole bunch of guests. Normally we have one or two guests on. Tonight we have Lauren, Vicky, and Chelsea on to talk about making for profit. Getting a little bit of feedback from somebody's speaker. I'm not sure who's.
If any of our guests are watching video,
mute it. Yeah, does anybody have the stream going? Yeah, so tonight we're joined with Lauren, Vicky, and Chelsea. They're in a range of making for profit, selling on places like Etsy and Shapeways and other services like that. Vicky has some experience, I believe, with 3D hubs at one point in time. So any questions you guys have for the three of them? And Dave also from Printed Solid has done quite a bit of making for profit prior to, and including WoW, he's been working co-owner of Printed Solid. So if you have any questions, tag the Friday night hangout in the chat and I'll keep track of your questions. And at some point through the night, probably around the 1 hour mark, we'll start getting to the questions from the chat room. So let's go ahead and start off with introductions. I'll start from my left, which will start us off with Kat.
Hi, everybody. I have a small little YouTube channel. It's called Cat 3D. I'm also very active over on Twitter, and I talk about everything that is 3D printing related, and I'm very happy to be part of this wonderful family. Okay.
All right. And that takes us to Chelsea.
Hey, everybody. I'm Chelsea. I am the wife to Garrett, whose channel is ChaosCoreTech on YouTube. I do all the painting for all of his stuff that he's done. And now I am venturing into my own stuff with laser cutting. I'm going to be doing like jewelry and potentially like bags, wallets, that sort of stuff. So that's kind of what I'm starting to do right now. Here's little samples of some of my stuff. I've got like my first set out on Etsy right now, and I am working on my second set of stuff to go up hopefully within about a week or so. But everything I've been doing right now has been all laser cut wood and then stained and put together. So far so good. But it was a lot of work getting all the packaging and stuff and figuring out the sizes and everything like that. But that's what I'm up to right now. And we should be starting up more videos on the YouTube channel soon, hopefully. So that's what I'm up to.
All right. That takes us to Dave. Oh, we might have lost Dave. All right, we'll go on to Lauren.
Hi guys, I am Lauren from Abuzz Designs. I used to be on YouTube a lot. I am not so much anymore, thanks to my Etsy shop. I sell magically inspired goods, meaning Disney inspired. I started off with ears and horns and all sorts of fun things like this, but as of the first of the year, I am no longer selling ears, and I have started selling little snap-on covers for magic bands for people who are going to Disney as a way to dress up their attire a little bit more. I think my shop has been open for 1.5 years now, and I'm just under 1,000 sales, which is insane. You can find me at Abuzz Designs on Etsy. You can go to abuzzdesigns.com. And my next restock is going to be on March 18th at 8 p.m. Eastern.
And that's something I want to talk about, Lauren. Remind me later on about what you mean by restock and how you go about doing that. All right, that moves us over to Vicky.
Hi, everyone. Long time no see. My name is Vicky Somma. I have a sparsely updated YouTube channel, which is TGAW3D. So the last video was 7 months ago. Sorry. You can find me on Twitter at TGAW. And how I started getting into selling my prints, my 3D designs, was I grew up and I now live in a small town called Occoquan, Virginia, which is south of Washington, D.C. And they do a big craft show every year. This is going to be the 50th anniversary of the craft show. So when I was a little girl, I grew up with this craft show, and I never thought that I would have something that, I could be a vendor there. But then I started 3D printing, and, I saw Todd Blatt at the National Maker Faire, and he had all this 3D printed earrings and jewelry, and it just was an aha moment. Like, everything he had was just as beautiful as the vendors I see in the Occoquan Craft Show. So you can make these lovely goods with 3D printing and, bring them to this kind of artisan gathering. And so my initial goal was I was going to bring 3D printing to the Occoquan Craft Show. And my idea was I would do this, and then other people would sign up and do 3D printing at the Occoquan Craft Show. It's been 5 years and still the only 3D printing booth, but like one day someone else will come and sell with me. And to complement the craft show, going into my first one, I was worried that I would run out of things. So I put up an Etsy site so people could order if, I ran out of anything. And I didn't run out of anything, but I had this Etsy shop, and I didn't tell anybody. I didn't even tell my best girlfriend that I put up an Etsy shop. And 7 days later, a lady in Minnesota had found me and ordered a butterfly magnet. And so now, I do both. But my shop is baby. I have a little tiny shop. I think I'm between the 250, 300 sales. So, and my shop's older than Lauren, so you can gauge the success level there. Most of the things, let's see, what kinds of things that I sell. I would say most of the things that I sell are ornaments. And, I'm doing a lot of celebrating in my town. And so this is a gazebo ornament, a gazebo that's in my town that my grandmother used to take me to. And now I take my little boys there. So I made this gazebo. I started selling it thinking it would just be for people in the town of Occoquan, but people buy them for cake toppers, and people get married and engaged in gazebos, so they buy them as souvenirs. I've had customization requests, so I've altered it a little bit or put engravings and stuff like that. I have a Christmas version with a Christmas tree that's painted, but my painting skills are nowhere near Chelsea's, but it's good enough for the people who want to buy it. I do bow ties, and a lot of my designs are geared towards people that I love. My husband wears a bow tie every day to work, so this was something I did for Father's Day. So I do sell bow ties, and this year I added in planters. This is another one that my husband was my muse. He likes Cthulhu, and we have all these air plants. So I made an air plant Cthulhu holder, and that went on Etsy this year and got its first few sales. So yay! And craft shows as well. I would say the bulk of what I sell quantity-wise are simple designs, like designs that are just 2D, and you make into like raise it up for the color switches, which if you have seen my YouTube video, I love the multiple processes and switching colors. Throwing back to people I love, my grandmother, the one who took me to the gazebo, used to have a bird feeder, and she'd teach me all the different birds. So we do have a series of little birds. And this is an oriole, and, I just make it into a little wreath. I happen to be close to Baltimore, so I get a lot of orders from Maryland. So I'm assuming it has to do with the Baltimore Orioles. So it's just a, fairly simple design for me to do, fairly fast to print, but it's something that does sell well. And then Christmas ornaments seem to be my biggest thing that I gravitate towards, and it's really easy to market. It's, you know, someone's looking for a gift. Oh, here's a Christmas ornament I'm going to give to somebody. And so I do have a series of, you know, I just print them. They're little simple prints with the color switches. So this is a blue-footed booby ornament, which I love. One day, maybe I'll go to the Galapagos. And my niece is a ballroom dancer. So, you know, I did a little ornament for her and then put it up on Etsy, and it resonated with others as well. So just finding, you know, like finding the people that I love and try to design for them has been beneficial to me. Now, when I got started with 3D printing, I didn't own my own printer. And so I did a lot of work through Shapeways, the service bureaus. And I still do have some products that I will do through them. I have a jewelry piece that I do, which, oh gosh, I'm not as good at this. But this is inspired by DNA with hearts in it. So originally the design is for myself, and the hearts are for my husband, me, and my 2 sons. But this is something that I would get the prints at Shapeways and put up on Etsy. And, you know, it's you know, not the quantity wise, it's not selling as much as, you know, like the birds or, you know, the things that are cheaper, but you find someone who connects emotionally to the piece. It's a special piece. It's a higher price piece. And an example is last winter, I had a lady who found out that she had a sister through DNA, it's 23andMe. Through 23andMe, they matched up and they started talking to each other, and they really, really connected. And when they met, they celebrated by getting 2 of these matching DNA pendants to have for each other. And so, you know, you put these higher price items up and maybe they don't move right away. But when they do, you know, there's often a really good story behind it, a really good connection to it. And there's some pieces that I don't have my comfort level yet to put on Etsy, but I will put up at the craft shows. Some of my upcycling projects are an example of that. I have like the upcycled, those are carrot K-cups on the lamp back there. I don't know how I'm going to ship that. So I don't put it up on Etsy, but it's something like if someone shows up at a craft show, I can, you know, give them the lampshade, and I don't have to worry about the logistics and like have the horrible pain in my stomach wondering if it's going to make it intact. Similar with the spool planners that I did with the recycled spools. I don't know. I just like people being able to see it and they can ask questions and I can point things out. You know, I don't want someone to have unreasonable expectations and you know, get it and be disappointed if they order from Etsy. And the same thing, I have some upcycled bracelets that do well at the craft shows, and I haven't really had the confidence to put it on Etsy because I'm not sure, you know, it fits me, it fits my mom. At a craft show, someone could put it on, make sure that they're satisfied with it, and I could put measurements and stuff like that. But yes, it's just something I haven't listed quite yet. And yeah, so I'm a little baby shop. But I find it very fulfilling. I've met some great people. I've gotten some great custom orders through Etsy and through the craft shows, and I'm going to keep on doing it.
Cool. Thanks, Vicky. All right, and that takes us over to Dave. Looks like his video came back.
Hey, David Randolph over at Printed Solid. You all know me from there, but before I became co-owner of Printed Solid, I was doing laser cutting for about the last 10 years, doing laser cutting, not so much in the arts and crafts, but more technical. So I was doing a lot of jigging, a lot of enclosures, a lot of display stands, things like that. And it kept growing and growing and growing to the point that it stopped becoming my side hustle and finally became my primary hustle about 3 years ago. So that's kind of how I ended up where I am. And now it's at a scale where I can't really call it a hobby anymore. And it's a darn shame because I always enjoyed that part. So now it's an actual job with actual work and taxes and bills to worry about. So there you go. That's my little thing.
All right. So something I wanted to start tonight off with is we all got 3D printers, laser cutters as a, so to speak, a toy to us to begin with. when you guys got your printers or laser cutters, what thought did you have towards making stuff for products? Was that thought there when you got started, or was that just something that, somebody asked you and it started to make you think about actually selling things that you design and print? Or was that your intentions off the bat when you got the devices that you use? I mean, we don't have to go down the line or anything like that. So just whoever wants to answer that.
For me, it wasn't, I never intended on selling anything. I bought a printer so I could build a coffee table and figure that would be the end of it. And then I started making some things that I enjoyed, and then other people started asking me if I would sell them to them. So that's how it started. With fidget spinners, actually. I made a Mickey fidget spinner and somebody said, can I buy that from you? And so that's how everything started, was with fidget spinners of all things.
I personally had selling jewelry and stuff in mind when I bought the laser cutter. That was my whole reason for buying it, was trying to actually make money off of something that we did. So, because I mean, we did 3D printing just for fun. All of our models were given away for free. Like, we never intended to really set out to make money doing that. But I'm like, I want to try to do something to make money that maybe I can get out of the job that I'm in now. So that was my sole purpose of buying the laser cutter, at least. 3D printers were mainly for just fun projects and stuff like that. But who knows? Maybe they'll turn into something too at some point. But the laser cutter is strictly to make profit, was why I bought it.
I had originally with my my first laser cutter, the only reason why I bought that machine was because I wanted to make 3D printers. And this was back before they actually were starting to sell them on the bulk. It was literally as soon as the patents expired, I was sitting there with a laser cutter going, all right, I'm going to start making my own 3D printers at home. And it kind of grew from there. So yeah, it was not my intention to make a profit off my first laser cutter. And I definitely did not make a profit off my first laser cutter. I think I'm still paying that off.
So my intention of buying my first 3D printer was waiting for a resin printer that I wanted or thought about creating jewelry with, which I could one day maybe sell in combination with the glass beads. And I don't know if you have heard about what happened to me. I got electrified because my preheating furnace is kind of broken. So I got struck by twice by 220 volt. And this now is a little bit bad because I cannot go on with this project at the moment. I have to wait until I can afford another preheating furnace. But that was my initial intention, yeah, to make jewelry that hopefully can sell one day.
What about you, Vicky?
So I'm kind of frugal and I dilly-dally on decisions. And so I actually didn't buy my first 3D printer. It was a birthday gift from my husband and my mom. And, I was looking at 3D printers. I wanted 3D printers, but it was overwhelming at the time, like which one to buy. And so they did the research and surprised me. I think initially, I don't think I had any plans of selling things, even though I had shared some designs on Shapeways and got a few sales that way. I think where it really started to click to me was when I learned to do filament color changes, and then all of a sudden that opened up a whole line of thinking in my head, and that's when I first started to see like maybe I can sell some things.
Yeah, and that's when I got my first printer. It was because I wanted to be able to do practical things. Actually, I remember telling Jen when I bought the printer, I'm like, yeah, I'll only have like 1 or 2 rolls of plastic around, and now I've got way more than I care to count. I just bought 24 rolls from Printed Solid the other week at one shot just to restock. And it's kind of like Lauren, you had said about, and Vicky, with you started to design things, people started seeing what you were doing with the printer and then came to you and started asking for stuff. Like my probably most repeated customer is my dad. And it's actually for practical things. I'm fixing claybird throwers for sporting clays at the gun club that he's a member of, that he runs the sporting clays. I'm actually printing replacement parts for them in stronger materials that are holding up better than the parts they'd have to wait weeks for from the manufacturer. So that's been a lot of the things I've been doing are more practical sales rather than decorative or jewelry type things. We've messed with the jewelry stuff a little bit. Like we've done bracelets. And Vicky, same thing. Like you said, you go to a craft show, bracelets are a great thing for a craft show because people can try them on, see if they fit. Otherwise, I don't know anything about bracelets. I think the first one I designed, I was asking Heather questions about them. I didn't even know what type of bracelet it was. And some of the stuff that we do that ends up getting sold, same as like Vicky said, with designing things for friends and family or with a family member in mind, a lot of the things that I design are for my daughter. For my oldest daughter, we're doing a lot more educational things and stuff like that. That has sparked interest when people see it on Facebook and Instagram. It brings up the question, hey, can you make that for me? So sort of the same deal. I got the first printer without any intentions of making any profit on it. And it opened up an entire world, not just in the profit side of things, but even creative side of things with painting and finishing models and stuff like that. So one of the things we were going to have Scott, the Archania, on Twitter come on. Vicky, he has what, over 6,000 sales on Etsy?
Oh, it was amazing. I don't know, but it was in the thousands. It was in the thousands.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was up around like 6,000 sales, and I'm not sure when he opened up his shop. Unfortunately, he's under the weather with a migraine and isn't able to join us tonight. But one of the things when we were talking in the message chat that we had going on to set the stream up was about people undervaluing what it is that they're doing with printers. And I think probably everybody on the panel has thoughts on how they price things. And even in the chat, the very first question we got tonight was from Jeff Slater. He asked, how do you handle people that request stuff for free? And I'll broaden that a little bit. How do you handle what you price your items at, and how do you handle when somebody asks you for something for free, or when you tell them the price for something and they go, oh, that's way too much. All you do is tell the printer to print it and keep going. So let's talk about that a little bit. How you guys come up with your pricing and how you deal with people who undervalue what it is that you make. Lauren, I know you, with the fidget spinners, you started out with some requests for fidget spinners early on.
Yeah, so when it comes to pricing, and I don't remember where I found this because it was so long ago, but I found a pricing calculator that somebody had come up with on how much your print is actually costing you. And it includes your electricity costs. It includes the cost of your printer over a certain amount of years. So it kind of breaks it down to help you figure out what it's actually costing you to make that item. And then it allows you to mark things up and figure out what you're actually making on that sale if you mark it up. I've had to adjust that because it doesn't apply to me the way that it was meant to. So I've completely kind of changed it around to apply to my shop. But I do take all of that into account. When I'm pricing out any product, I do it based on my most expensive filament. So if I think the most expensive I use most frequently is protopasta. So no matter what, I'm pricing everything I do at a protopasta price because chances are at some point it's going to get printed in protopasta. So it allows me the flexibility of not having to worry about undercutting myself. I've also noticed a lot of shops not necessarily taking their own time into consideration. And you have to do that. You have to take what you're putting out into consideration when you're pricing out a product, because your time is valuable. And if anybody tells you otherwise, you should walk away from the situation, because your time is insanely valuable and what you're doing is worth what you're putting into it. On the same note, you also need to keep in mind that just because you wouldn't necessarily pay something for a product does not mean that somebody else wouldn't. You need to price your product based on your customer, not necessarily based on what you think it should be. You need to do your research. You need to find out who your customer is, and you need to know that customer through and through. And in doing that, it helps you get a more accurate pricing, and it stops customers from making them feel like you're overcharging them. In terms of free product, I have a couple of brand reps that I send product to that send me pictures and do a lot of advertising for me. They're good friends of mine and I trust them. Whenever somebody asks if I will send them free product, I politely decline and just walk away from it. It's not worth my time to try to explain to somebody why they shouldn't be asking for free stuff from somebody.
Yeah, you made a really good point with knowing your client. When I did portrait photography and my wife worked in daycare, I set my prices based on what my time was worth, what my time away from my family was worth to me. But I was also able to bump that price and inflate it a little bit because of the exposure. When those daycare would request pictures from home of our daughters, we always sent the photos that I did as if it was a client, my professional pictures. We sent those, and a lot of my work came from the other families at the daycare because they saw it. I knew what the childcare cost. I knew what, so to speak, class of the class people were in financially and what they're able to afford, and I could set my prices. I could inflate them a little bit better to match that market rather than, you know, the friends and family price, so to speak, that everybody always asks for. I'm sure every one of you probably have had a friend or family member ask you to print something really cheap for them because they think you'll do them a favor and do it that way. So that's a really good point, Lauren. Knowing your client is a huge part of setting your pricing. The Robbie Mack said in the chat, he said something to not forget to take into account is all the time you took to get to the point to be able to print on request on demand. If that's the type of profit that you're getting is based on orders that are made to order rather than, like Lauren, you mentioned restocking your shop. If you're printing things on a request, you know, you've got design time. How many items are you going to sell with that design time? If it's for one person and a one-off, the price probably should be higher for it than something that you're going to repeatedly sell, or you're going to print 5 of them and sell 1 and keep 4 in stock to sell to somebody else. So
I'll tell you one thing. I was going to say on my pricing side of things, for me, something to always consider is that there is downtime in between projects or even between jobs. And if you aren't accounting for that in your pricing, because literally if you make one product for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, you have no downtime. But when you have to swap out between products, you know, on a daily basis, and you lose an hour or 2 on each day, that money's still got to come from somewhere. So that's kind of the scale when you think about it, because as you know, as we're doing these ultimately micro products, as I would call them, where, you know, you're not making 10,000 of, you know, one design, you're making 10, 20, things like that. You've got to take that in consideration with your pricing, because just changing out materials on a 3D printer, changing out materials on a laser cutter, all that off time where you're not actually making product and making money has to get leveraged out across to everything else. That's always something that you definitely have to consider.
Yeah, definitely. Vicky, the way you do your multicolor prints, I know from experience, and I'm sure others do as well, is a very time-consuming process, at least initially. I know when I was doing collar changes in anything that was being sold, I always timed the first couple of prints to when I had to do the filament change, so that I could set timers and things like that. How do you, when you're doing your filament swaps to do the multi-collar stuff?
Okay. So one thing I'm very, very privileged and lucky where my day job, I telecommute. And so I've been telecommuting for 12 years. So I get to be home with these printers. I do use Simplify 3D with the multi-processes. And with my new printer, the M3 ID, I can have it play a tone when it's ready for its filament swap. So I used to be before I used Simplify 3D, or even I think even at the beginning before I knew multiple processes, I would watch the print for the time to pause it, and it made me a less engaged mother, because I couldn't be playing with my kids because I knew that there would be a color change coming up, and now I just have the printers wait for me.
When you're doing your pricing, you take.
Oh, when I'm doing my pricing, okay. So I don't think, I'm not going to be a very good role model for people here, because I think I do tend to underprice things with the little bird magnets and the bird ornaments, the little flat things that are multicolored. Very often what I'm trying in my head, and I know there's a lot more to it, but I'm more protective of my time, and I want to recoup my modeling costs. So, as things sell more quantities of it, I'm a little more relaxed with the pricing. But the little bird magnets are just, like $5 or whatnot. And just doing just a big batch of them and having them waiting there for when they get sold is, what I do is I just do a whole bunch of them at once instead of like one-on-one. I will say Lauren was really, really right on don't judge, like what you would buy and what you would pay, because I tend to be a little more frugal, and I'm constantly surprised, like with the special pieces that I have a higher price, like that people will go pay for it. And I'm also surprised, these little magnets that are $5, someone will buy it and then pay the $9 expedited shipping on it. And so that's something like I wouldn't do, but they do.
What about you, Chelsea? This is all new to you, pricing your work as far as making for pricing work.
Yeah, I would say that I definitely am someone who tends to undershoot what I should probably charge for things. I think I just come by that naturally. That's kind of how my family is. We are just very generous to just give things to people. So I actually ran my pricing by Heather, and she's like, oh, no. You're way underpricing your stuff. I'm just like, really? Like, I don't feel like I would pay that for what I'm, like a pair of earrings. But I'm like, I have to think like they are, hand designed and handmade and sanded and stained. And so I know that she's right, but I would definitely say that I'm one that I have to like check myself, because I would definitely price it too low. So
the one thing I've learned over the years with all the different things that I do, like even my day-to-day stuff, doing heating and air conditioning, for years, I'm the same way, Chelsea. I was always brought up, somebody in my family does something for me and I return the favor by doing something for them type of deal. Never exchanging money. Money never exchanges hands. And it took me a long time to start to realize that, by fixing somebody's air conditioning for the cost of the parts, or helping somebody do something just for the cost of my time, but not actually like getting paid for my time, I became very busy with doing things for other people because I was cheap. When I did charge, I always undercut what I should charge for it. I mean, I do heating and air conditioning work that the company I work for makes over $100 an hour on my time, and I don't bring home close to that $100 an hour. That's something that it took me a long time to get out of that, and I still catch myself doing it, where somebody will ask me what something costs and I undercut it. One of what Scott had mentioned in our chat prior to the stream was people devaluing what they're making, and how that affects all of us as a whole, making and selling items. One of the things that I find myself doing when somebody is interested in something I made, like one of my Star Wars helmets or something like that, I always get the question, oh, how much did that cost you to make? And initially, it started out with, yeah, it cost me close to about $120 in material and time, material to make it, paints, all that stuff. I realized, I'm telling them this cost me $100 to make it. They're thinking I can make one for them for $100. That ain't happening. What do you guys think about that when you see people selling things for way under what you feel they should be sold? I mean, obviously everybody's price is up to them what they sell it, but how, as somebody who's making and selling stuff, when you do see things that you think are priced cheaply, or you see people making the comment, what do you mean you're going to charge me $20 for that? I know it only takes you a little bit of time and $2 worth of material to make it. How do you guys handle that conversation? I know Lauren said just walk away.
Yeah, well, I mean, it kind of depends. When I first started making ears, I was one of 8 shops, and now there are over 100, which is one of the reasons why I stopped making them, because once a market gets flooded, it kind of becomes difficult to stand out. And you also had that problem where people were now coming along who had just picked up a 3D printer and said, oh, well, I can do this, and started making them themselves, which they could, but then they were pricing them at half the price. And some of that, yes, may have been they were using lesser quality filament or less expensive filament. There's a big difference between buying nothing but Hatchbox and buying nothing but Protopasta. And that's going to affect your price. But there's also the fact that I think a lot of those shops weren't taking into account their time. And it makes your customers, not necessarily your existing customers, because they know your quality and know what they're paying for. But I do think it does make people question who have not purchased from you. Why can I get this from them that's a very similar item for half the price of what you're charging me? And it just brings everything down instead of, keeping things on a level and competitive field.
One you mentioned earlier was your HVAC place charges $100 an hour for you. And that's something important for people to remember when they're pricing their stuff, is that it isn't a minimum wage job. This isn't, you're not getting, $7.25 an hour for 3D printing. There's a lot of other costs that are being paid for during that hour. So, your HVAC guy's got to pay your salary plus insurance, plus, the rental and the car space and all the other junk that goes along with that $100 an hour. The same is true for just a 3D printer. So when I see people, that charge $5 an hour for 3D printing, even though they're not in front of the machine, you got to remember there's a lot of cost involved to just have a 3D printer turned on, for a person. You really do have to take into account your home shop, your office space, the rent you're having to pay for that, your shipping and receiving, all those other little things. So when you tell someone, I want to print your object, I'm just a printing bureau, and you give them a rate of $5 an hour, even then you're lowballing, because you aren't taking account of the other things. So when you add on top of that premium filaments and your own designs that you've had to do, that really does make your hourly rate go up more, or you have to do some sort of equivalent surcharge for how much work you put into it. So that's why I never feel bad when someone asks me what my hourly rate is for laser cutting or 3D printing. And if people say I can find it cheaper, I say you're more than welcome to, because that person's probably buying their filament from me anyways.
One thing I do. Oh, sorry to interrupt, but if I'm doing a modeling quote, which is substantially higher than like if I'm just printing a bird or something for a craft show, I will explain to them my hourly rate, and then I'll tell them like, hey, if you want to shop around, I send them to a list of Shapeways designers, that I don't think they're going to get a better price from, at all.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I've had some that go off to their kids or their son's friend down the street that said he'll do it for $50, and then they get the model and it's god awful. And I'll usually go back and have to requote them, and I quote them as if it's brand new. I sit there and say, that person didn't help me at all, so you're back to square one, because I can't start with junk. You have to start from scratch.
Saw something that jumped out in the chat that I wanted to say, and now I lost it.
So if I ever get finished with this project, really turning these pieces into physical pieces of jewelry, I thought about, okay, which material should I use? And of course, silver is way easier to cast than, for instance, chrome cobalt. But the price point would be, of course, more interesting for people that cannot spend so much on silver jewelry. And so I don't really know how I'm going to deal with that once I'm ready. Yeah. And yeah, for me, it's not that easy to find the price.
Was it safe to say that jewelry is usually a piece that someone will find an emotional connection to? So I think that's easier for me mentally to charge higher for, because you're going to find that right person, and it's going to make that connection with them, and they're going to pay that price.
Yeah. So, for instance, silver, you have to put on the scale. You have to weigh the weight of the material. Then the hours I put into creating it, and then printing and post processing on these resin printers is very long. And then post processing, the silver, then you have a loss on the silver, and yeah, it's not easy.
In addition to that kind of that heart feeling that you find towards a product, the more unique your product is in the market, meaning if your earrings are stylized in such a way that people identify it as yours, the more value it claims to it as well. So, that's something to always take in consideration is, does your product actually represent you, or is it unique to you? Because that adds a lot more value to a product.
Yeah, for sure.
Mike in the was it Mike? No, Chris in the chat made a good point. People who are undercharging are also not operating ethically, not paying taxes, not licensing models, etc. It's something you really do have to pay attention to. I know a lot of shops right now that are in trouble because they did not pay attention to tax time and how much money was coming in versus what was going out. And it is a legitimate business. Just because you have an Etsy shop does not make it a non-legitimate business. It's a business, and you need to treat it as if it is one, including all of the not so fun things that come along with owning a business, like having an accountant take care of your books or figuring out tax law yourself. And you have to pay for those things, which means you have to incorporate that into your price to the customer.
Yeah, and when you're doing small sales, that stuff may not be very apparent to you. But like Lauren, when you started selling your fidget spinners, you probably didn't expect to sell tons of them. And
no, I had no idea. I mean, I had already set up the business because of YouTube, so that I would have an outlet to have things run through separate from our own finances. So I already had it set up, which helped me. But I had no idea I was going to sell a couple hundred fidget spinners. Well, who would ever think that they were actually going to sell a couple hundred fidget spinners? Nobody would.
Right.
So but looking at, and then even these Magic Band covers, I've sold, I want to say like 500 of them now, like since November. So I would have never expected to sell that many that quickly. And that money adds up and taxes roll around. And you have to take things like that into account and, figure out sales tax. Now that sales tax laws across the country are changing for internet sales, you have to take all of that into account. And if you don't want to do it personally, you have to pay somebody to do it. And that money's got to come from somewhere, and it's going to come from your sales.
Yeah, you can't. What I was starting to say with that, you can't open an Etsy shop and only plan on selling enough to skirt that, whatever it is, $600, I think, income per year from that business, to not have to claim taxes, or you can't plan that you're going to sell enough that doesn't outweigh your costs for operating that year. I know, a lot of people set up businesses to be able to make the purchases through so they can have more toys, but they sell just enough that they're always in the negative and they're not paying taxes. They're playing games with the tax system. You put something out there like Lauren that is a hit, and you sell 100 of them or 500 of them in a heartbeat. I mean, 500 of the Magic Band covers since November. That's a ton. You have to be prepared for something to take off. And if you don't,
you do. I mean, and there is ways to play around with it. I mean, it does give you do play the game with the government. I mean, any business owner is going to. You want to, having extra funds allows you to buy an MMU, allows you to buy an additional printer, and those are tax write-offs for your business. So you do play that game of what can be written off, what can't, when you're coming to the end of the year and you realize you've got extra income. But there's also laws in certain states where you have to have a profitable business in a certain amount of years. In Maine, it's 5 years. So if I don't turn a profit in 5 years, it's no longer considered a business. It's now considered a hobby. So then certain things get taken away from your abilities at that point. So you really need to kind of learn what your state requires and what's required federally for your business and what you can and can't do.
Right.
And don't forget with the new internet taxes that are going across all the states, depending on what states you sell into and the quantity you sell into, your business has to qualify for business in that state to pay those taxes.
Correct. And if anybody wants a tip, there's a company called the Tax Jar online that is fantastic, and that's who I use. It's who a bunch of people I know use. They tell you if you have nexus in a state and if you need to pay in that state, and it works with all of your platforms, with PayPal, with Etsy, with Shopify, all of those, to take care of everything so that you don't have to guess. And it's only like $20 a month.
I'll drop a link to that in the chat. Taxjar.com, right, Lauren?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
Mission critical, yeah. I mean, we pay a fortune for accountants and bookkeepers and all that stuff just because we're dealing with a lot of stuff. But small businesses, I feel for them because unfortunately these state tax laws are ridiculous. I mean, right now I think it's 13 states you have to file in if you're internet sales. Imagine being told that this year you've got 13 new tax returns you have to do on top of all the forms you're already currently doing.
That is one really good thing about Etsy, is Etsy does take on some of those that are state required no matter what. So like Washington, Connecticut, I don't remember what the other states are, but Minnesota, I think, where they automatically collect sales tax. You don't have to worry about it. Etsy takes those taxes, charges the customer, and then automatically submits it for you. It never touches your hands. You never have to worry about it. So that is one benefit of selling on Etsy versus selling on your own.
How many of you guys? Go ahead, Dave.
I'm going to put one more interesting thing, just since we were on the topic of taxes. Depending on what platform you on, your platforms like Etsy and Shopify and all those stores, they take a fee for each transaction. And depending on how good and how legal you are, your accountants might be able to look at the funds, and the fee does not count towards your income, depending on how the transactions are done. So, and you'd be surprised how much that little transaction fee adds up for you.
Yeah, definitely. How many of you guys do, Vicky, I know you do craft shows and sell, probably do some cash sales. How do you guys figure that into your business when you're doing cash sales?
Well, I'm still ringing up the cash sales in a Square Up app, so I still have the accountability there. So I still have reports and spreadsheets of what my cash sales were.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant. Is
Okay.
Something like Square Up or something to actually record all that, so you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have all my products on there, and my husband very, very kindly sometimes it's a 2-day craft show, and sometimes it's 90-degree heat, and sometimes there's birthday parties or some other obligation that I want to go to. He'll watch the booth for a while, and he can ring things up the same way. So.
Lauren, do you do any cash sales at all, or is everything you do pretty much?
I've done a handful, but usually I run everything through PayPal or a Square type app. It just makes things easier.
Yeah. Chelsea, I know you're just getting started, but anything you guys have done or any plans for cash sales, any apps or anything?
I also do hair on the side. I'm a cosmetologist, so I use Square for that. So I'll probably just make another account through Square to also use it for the CCT designs side of it. And I possibly might be doing a craft show at the end of this month, right before we head to Murph. So that is probably what I would do for that.
All right. Dave, any recommendations? Oh, he might have disappeared. Let's hit a couple of questions from the chat. Ronnie Julian asked early on, he asked about making remixes of stuff that he finds online. He asked the question, and this is a common topic, so see what your thoughts are with this. If you take something that's Creative Commons, remix it, he asked, is it okay to sell that item? So as designers, and you guys are all, everything you make, myself included, anything we make that we're selling is our design or our creation. It might be inspired by something, but it's our creation. What kind of answer do you guys have to that?
I personally wouldn't do it. Or I would ask permission before I did it, because it's somebody else's original work, even if it is Creative Commons. I still just wouldn't, personally, I just wouldn't do it in my shop. I want everything in my shop to be my own physical designs, even though they are Disney inspired. They're still my creations. They're my interpretations of characters, or my interpretations of experiences or things in parks. And I want that to be mine. I don't want, I would not want somebody else's. If I posted something, I wouldn't want somebody else to take my design and turn it into something for themselves. Even if it is Creative Commons, I still wouldn't do it.
Chelsea, what's your thoughts on that? I didn't mean you're right after the drink. I'm sorry.
I agree with Lauren. That's kind of been, I would say, one of my biggest things is just like people stealing ideas from other people, I guess. I hate it. It's like, just try to come up with your own thing, if at all possible. If not, you need to ask the person who did it initially, if that's okay. Like, asking permission for something first is like the #1 go-to, I feel like. Because if they're, if the person that did it is fine with it, then I think everything's fine. But don't just go and do something and start selling it and doing whatever you want with it at that point.
Yeah, I know we've talked about this before. different streams, I think, and I know at Murph and stuff, with the designs that Garrett does and that you paint and finish.
Right.
Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that? Because I know you guys have a really strong feeling on the, so to speak, inspired work.
Right.
Do you want to talk a little bit about where you guys stand with that?
Basically, where I personally stand with that is, like, every design that Garrett has done is, like, we have never sold the STLs, the models, files. Like, we have never sold anything when it comes to those designs, because they are copyright. You know, they're all Disney characters, video game characters, everything like that. So it super peeves me off when he gives away those files for people to use for their own, you know, what they want to do, but then they turn around and they're making profit off those. They're selling things, you know, making them, selling them to other people. It's just like super annoying to me that we're doing the right thing by not selling those copyright, you know, models, and then people turn around and they're not doing the right thing. That drives me nuts. So basically anything that we have ever done that is Disney characters and video game stuff, he has always just released the files for free. We have gotten no profit off of those at all. So that's kind of where we have stood with that sort of stuff.
Let's follow up on that a little bit with a question from the chat. It's actually my brother. He asked, what sort of designs of our designs would you publish and share under Creative Commons? Do any of you guys, the things that you design and sell on your Etsy shop, or just in general design for profit, do you list them anywhere, upload them to like Thingiverse and stuff? Do you put them under Creative Commons? Because like as the original designer of it, you can publish it at Creative Commons and still sell it yourself. That doesn't limit you. It limits anybody else. What would you guys upload that you sell or design? And would you do it as Creative Commons or would you do it otherwise?
Everything I've done has been non-commercial. So anything I've posted has been a non-commercial use. So I personally don't think I would ever do a Creative Commons, although I guess there's a couple like temperature tower things that I've done that I threw on there that are Creative Commons, but nothing that I would ever put in my shop would be listed as just a straight Creative Commons license.
So the fun things I create, I would put on there for free. But when it comes to my own jewelry design, which I would then sell in the future, I wouldn't give that away for free. No way.
What I've done with some of the stuff, like I'll bring Patreon into it a little bit because I've kind of converted my Patreon to be more about what I'm making. Not initially it was, you know, support my YouTube channel. It's more or less, you know, if you want a sneak peek at what I'm working on, designs, finishing prints, things like that. One of the things I've done lately is the educational stuff that I've been designing for my daughter. I've been posting to my Patreon early for Patreon members to download those ahead of time, and typically give them 2 weeks to download those before going public with them. Sort of like as an incentive to, you know, if people want early access to that, or they just want to see more in depth what I'm up to or things that I learned along the way. Because like with YouTube, I've been absolutely horrible at creating videos lately and uploading anything I've done. So I've put the stuff there, but pretty much everything that I've designed that I feel would be any use to somebody, I've ended up putting on Thingiverse at some point in time. I usually will give myself a little bit of a lead time with it, and then I'll upload it. Now there are some things on our Etsy shop that are not published anywhere. A lot of that kind of comes down to how much time it took me for that design. Creating like the Ravens hair bows for my daughter. Again, family inspired. I did it for my daughter. The cheerleading one, I did it for my daughter. Those got put up on Etsy. The Ravens one got put on Thingiverse. The cheerleading ones are kept private. So I kind of do a mixture of Creative Commons. I don't think I've listed anything in any other way but Creative Commons. Dave, you guys with Printed Solid, he jumps off every time I start to call him out.
I'm back.
You guys with the showroom, I know you have a lot of different models. Now you guys have the Surlayers a lot that you own the license to, essentially. But how do you guys pick and choose the models that you use to display the products that you're selling? I know that's been a recent topic in companies doing that for profit, printing a Creative Commons item and getting any kind of publicity or showing off that. How do you guys pick and choose?
Well, if it's a Creative Commons without non-commercial on it, what we'll do is if you see it, we'll usually attach a tag to it or to the bottom of it or anything like that. That shows, who the creator was and where you can find it, that type of thing. But the other thing we also do is we actually have our own collection on Thingiverse where we've collected up all the things that we've printed in our showroom and put it into that and point people to here and say, here, if you saw it here, it's definitely right here for you to go find out who the creator was and see those type of things. But we try to give attributes to it. We do have a couple of non-commercials in the stores, but that's usually it's customers that say, absolutely, we'll print one out and show it on your shelf type of thing. But we try very hard to adhere to it because we are predominantly open source with a lot of our stuff. So we don't want to we don't want to be that person with the bad reputation in that category.
Hey, Vicky's back. Vicky, we were talking about whether the models that you sell are released on Creative Commons, and the question that kind of spurred all this is people remixing. What our opinions are of people remixing an item on, say, Thingiverse that's listed Creative Commons. It was asked if it's okay to sell your remix of that.
Well, when I think, hopefully I'm not regurgitating something someone else said, but when you're doing that Creative Commons license, you can say whether it's going to be a remix license and, like if they can make changes to it. And then there's also like a share alike option where like if they do make a remix, they have to share it the same way that you do as well, which actually I remixed a model. And then I didn't realize it was allowing commercial. And then I didn't realize it, but it was a remix. And I went back and that one did not allow commercial and had the share alike. So, I didn't end up selling it. Just I felt, like that there was a mix up in the licensing there.
Yeah. And that Vicky points out something really important there too. You've got Creative Commons, you have share alike, you have non-commercial, commercial use. There's different levels of Creative Commons as well. Mm-hmm. So that's a really good point. You do have to do your research and make sure that the person you're remixing a model from is also abiding by the license that was previous to theirs if theirs was a remix of something else. You kind of have to do a little bit of history on it if you want to keep yourself in the clear trying to make a profit on something.
Yeah, and I didn't do that. I didn't go back in the history before I put all my modeling time into it, but it was fun for my family.
Now, your designs that you have on Etsy, I know with a few of them, you have them on Thingiverse or other websites. Do you publish a lot of the stuff that you sell while you're selling?
It's a very little fraction of the models that I have that are on Thingiverse. Some of the upcycling projects I'll do as public domain because, that way more people can upcycle. I did also read a really fascinating article Michael Weinberg, I think, from Shapeways. He went to a Creative Commons conference, and from that conference, and I'll try to find the blog post that I can put in the chat. But he was talking about the Creative Commons license is designed for artistic stuff, and you shouldn't be, putting the Creative Commons license on something that's functional or something that doesn't have an artistic element to it. Otherwise, you're sort of diluting the license and making it less enforceable. And so I did change things, like I have like connectors for spool holder, spools, that I changed those to public domain as well. But the items that I did put on Thingiverse, I didn't feel like it competed with my Etsy shop or my craft show sales at all, because the audience that I'm selling to typically don't have 3D printers yet. And I hope, that they'll be inspired to want to get into 3D printing and try to do their craft shows. But, this might, I don't know if this is, well, I'll just say it. One thing I'm toying in my head is I have all these models, that aren't up on Thingiverse, and like with my passing, they're going to go away. So right now, my husband's instructions is to send them over to Printed Solid, and they get all my models, and they can decide what to do with them.
Nice.
We'll honor your wishes.
Chuck Hellebuck asked if you've ever had to report a seller that stole your design and then sold it cheaper than you. And Chelsea, this would apply to you guys with ChaosCoreTech as well. Have you ever had to actually do a takedown request? Or contact?
Jared does takedown requests for a lot of his videos. And have you done takedown requests for models and stuff? Yeah, because there's been a lot of people who have tried to on random ones that you're not even on, right?
Well, sometimes, because I've even had people on PinShape and Umagine, and I think even Thingiverse upload my files just to a different account.
Right.
And those are pretty easy to take down. But every once in a while, I'll have people on Facebook or Etsy trying to sell my stuff without giving permission or whatever, saying that I created them.
Right. I don't know if you could hear him, but yeah, he's had to request takedowns for his models on PinShape, Umagine, that sort of stuff. And then also with people selling physical objects of his models on Etsy and posting on Instagram without what? And Facebook. Oh, Facebook. Yeah, I remember that guy. And Facebook. So yeah, we've dealt with that stuff a lot.
I'm almost daily for takedown notices on eBay, Alibaba, AliExpress, all those guys. I'm filing at least 1 or 2 daily, but it makes it even worse because I have to file it because they actually list the product as made by me and link to me for support and documentation. And refer to me for all warranty issues. So I have other legal reasons that I have to do takedowns on those guys. I do have a couple. I mean, there are people out there that sell my designs that literally in the description say, this is not by Printed Solid. This is not by David Randolph. We're just selling his designs. And then I go, all right, you're selling my designs, fine. Just don't try and pretend to be me, and that's where the real problem comes in.
Lauren, what about with your stuff? You had somebody buy fidget spinners from you to then resell, didn't you?
Yeah, and they didn't sell them, which I thought was hilarious.
Karma.
Yeah. So I've had a couple people directly duplicate my designs, and I have never had to resort to reporting them. I have always asked nicely that they take down their designs. And sometimes it turns into a gigantic disaster. And sometimes they're really nice about it and just take down the design. I've also called people out for Garrett and Chelsea about using their designs and not giving them credit and selling them. Because if those Creative Commons licenses are there for a reason, and you kind of have to pay attention to them. And if you don't, it's just going to ruin the entire community. So that's my thought on it.
Vicky, have you had that at all?
One to my knowledge, I had a little Pokestop ornament, and we actually talked about it on the second episode of the Friday 3D printing community hangout ever. And someone that is on Thingiverse, and someone took that design and made a tree topper, and mentioned in their thing like, we designed this, and there's multiple ways to make the Pokestop spin. I had a video on it with 3 different techniques of spinning that I tried, and it was the one that I had settled on, and that I did not pursue because it actually, this came up on the second episode of the 3D printing community hangout. I didn't have a good answer of, it wasn't my intellectual property. So and I subsequently had taken that design down from Etsy because it's just something that I just is stuck in my head. And really, I'm like, I'm going to fight them for something that wasn't my intellectual property to begin with. So, I just, look the other way.
I think a really good follow-up from Sean Gold in the chat. He asked where the line is between being inspired by an existing design and when it's a remix. So I guess seeing something that inspires you, like a lot of times I prefer to print my own design. Even if I see somebody else's that makes me go, oh, that's cool, but I'd like to do it this way, or you know what, I could design that too. Rather than using somebody else's, I'll design and print my own. It may turn out to be almost identical to it, but I did the design work, and I find more pride in doing the design work myself rather than downloading somebody else's. Where do you guys think the line is drawn between inspiration versus just remixing something?
I think inspiration is okay. Why not? Maybe you just write under your object that inspired by this and that person, but you're not trying to copy it. Just it's like an inspiration.
Eddie Moser pointed out in the chat, which is a good point. There is the 10% law. As long as you change 10% of it, it's considered your own at that point. But what do you guys? What do the rest of you think? Where do you draw that line? Like in my case, for me, if I'm inspired by somebody else's design, but I turn around and design my own, model my own, to me, that's enough of a, not specifically for profit, so to speak, but that's enough of a difference for me that I'm not using theirs and modifying their files. I'm creating my own files. Chelsea, like with you guys, with Garrett doing all the Disney-inspired Transformers, stuff like that, there's not a change in it. Now, you guys aren't selling it either. Where would you guys define that line between inspired versus remixing it?
I don't know.
I basically don't, because it's like a lot of my stuff they're like copyrighted characters anyway, so I don't know. If someone makes another copy, it usually looks pretty different anyway, like if they model it themselves. So it's like I don't have any claim there.
Right.
Nor would I want a claim. But basically, if they alter my files at all, I'm fine with it. I just ask them to credit me, just to say where they got the files from in the first place.
Right, but like us, like being inspired by the Disney character, is that kind of what you mean, Matt?
Yeah.
Like us designing it? Well, it's just like, I mean,
yeah,
your whole point is to make it look like exactly, to design exactly like what the character is supposed to look like.
Yeah, so it's like I don't even really call it my design. It's more like fan art than anything.
Right.
And that's why I don't sell anything. It's just like, it's not really my stuff. It's like I put in the work to 3D model it, but it's not my character. It's not.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, ours are meant to look as close to the actual, character as possible. So
yeah, and that's why I give everything away for free. Because it's like I don't know the specific legality of all that, because it's like it's somewhere in the.
It's like, yeah, it's technically fan art, but it is like
it's just like it's legal
pretty
gray area at best, and so it's like I wash my hands of it. And if any like if Disney were to reach out to me and be like, "Yo, take that shit down," I would be like, "Okay," and just take it down right away.
Right.
Have you had that happen, Garrett? At all?
I have not, but
No.
I've known people that Disney has, because like Disney cracked down on Star Wars stuff on Thingiverse.
Right.
But I didn't have any Star Wars. Well, actually, I did, but it didn't get hit.
Oh,
R2D2.
R2D2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That one didn't get hit.
Uh-uh.
Huh.
Go ahead.
So I need to chime in here because I feel like this is a really good example. Most people would look at this and see Daisy Duck, but really all it is just a purple bow on a pink band. So to me, that is something that is Disney inspired, but is not a duplicate. It's not Daisy's bow. It's just a random bow I drew. So it's a Disney inspired item, but it's not a duplicate. So this is mine. It's my concept. And if somebody were to steal this, I would call them out on it because it is my use, my idea, the way that I have interpreted a character without actually duplicating a character. I don't want to duplicate characters. They're Disney's. I want to make you look at something and think of a character without it being there. So that includes just painting things certain colors or changing a bow color to make it seem like it's Daisy Duck instead of, you know, if I made that black and red, people would automatically think Minnie Mouse. You know, and it's just a color selection, but the design itself is a bow that I drew myself. It's, you know, the clip-on itself is something that I modeled and spent hours and hours figuring out how to get it to snap on and stay in place. Things like that make the design an inspired design that is not a duplicate. And I think that there is a very fine line there, and you have to be careful not to cross it.
Yeah, especially, I mean, you've seen that with the mouse ears, and I'm sure you'll probably, as other people start picking up doing the magic bands and stuff, you've seen people do direct duplicates, and people do.
Yeah, and I have to say, I'm much more careful now than I ever used to be. You know, like I'm much more cognizant of what I'm doing now than I was before, you know, and I think as you're furthering your business, you kind of learn what you should and shouldn't be doing, and you take a step back. But at the same time, I'm also the only one that makes them for magic bands. There are people that do Apple Watch covers and Fitbit covers, but I'm the only person out there that makes them for magic bands. So the minute somebody would try to steal that too, I'd also probably go after them.
So I have a confession. You said most people will look at this and think Daisy Duck. I thought it was Minnie Mouse. So I need to work on my Disney know-how so I can be friends.
Chris said in the chat, as far as the difference between inspired and remix, he used for the example, he said, if I draw a square and he draws a square, that's inspiration. If he takes my square and turns it into a rectangle, then it's a remix.
And what about if I put a kerf on that rectangle?
That's a remix of a remix. You got to go back and check the first person's license. That is a good way to sum it up. I mean, look, if you put and Chuck even said too, he said about like the 10% thing. How do you define 10%? Number of hours, amount of material, or is it changes to 10% of changes to the model, visual 10%? How do you define when it comes to something like designing in 3D printing something? Like I was using the example of, well, actually, you know what? Right here. So my smartwatch, the charger quit working for it. And right before the stream, I modeled this up and printed it. Other than the hole in the middle, this is the original. This is the one that I quickly modeled and printed before the stream. They're identical. I mean, the measurements of this made this. Okay, so that's a direct duplicate of it. If I'm printed the full model that I did and not just part of it that has this hole and stuff that makes it an obvious difference. If I printed it exactly like this, which I do a lot, when I make practical replacement parts for stuff, I duplicate exactly what it is. You have to. So is that a remix of it, or is it just a direct copy? You know what I mean? I've put the time and all that in. So does my time count as the 10%?
I'll say this for you. One thing I learned the hard way a long time ago, that 10% rule is wonderful internet folklore. 10% is nowhere close to it. Pretty much in the courts, if you can prove that someone's work infringes on your potential for financial gain, you have grounds. That's how vague the terminology is. So you run into this horrible category of pretty much who has the best lawyer is really what it comes down to at the end of the day. So the fact that Disney is not making those snap-on bands and you're not directly devaluing their intellectual property, you have pretty good, reasonable grounds to never have to worry about it.
But if they ever told me to take it down, I would walk away.
Right.
That's not a fight I want to fight.
You don't want to get a big enough lawyer to go after theirs.
That would be stupid. The minute I get a cease and desist, I walk away. Done.
And that's the best thing in the world to do. But in your case, I mean, you have a very reasonable ground that you're not putting any financial hardships on Disney. So, I mean, but once again, I'm not a lawyer, and that's what we pay lawyers for, ungodly amounts of money. But yeah.
I know of one person who's gotten a cease and desist from Disney, and it was because they were directly copying a product that Disney sells. Disney uses a lot of the small shop community to do marketing research. They use it as a gigantic marketing research. A lot of their new shirts that are out were small shop shirts first. So the minute they tell me to stop, I stop. I walk away, you know, but I try to keep it as I keep them inspired without directly duplicating. And most of the artwork I draw myself. I don't just go off of pictures. I draw things myself, and then I sketch off of my own drawings. So nothing is just a direct copy of something you would see online.
Mike said in the chat, and he said, and you take the cease and desist letter and frame it.
Exactly.
Okay. Another question from the chat. 3D Printing World asked, again, this was early on too. For everybody watching, if you do have a question, tag at Friday 3D Printing Community Hangout, or I usually catch F3D PCH with your questions, and I'll be sure to add them to my list of questions. 3D Printing World asked if he releases his design on Thingiverse, even though he is selling it on his Etsy store, does anyone... Oh, we already covered that. Never mind. Oh, actually, yeah, there's the reason I tagged that. So back to the conversation of taking your designs, posting them online. For those of you who do that, do you think it hurts your sales at all to release the design files? Or
depends on your customer base.
I was going to say, you don't post yours.
I do have my fidget spinners on there. When I was selling them, my fidget spinners were on there. And I don't think it affected my sales at all, but that's because my customer base is not usually the type of person who has a 3D printer to go print their own.
What's everybody else think? Do you think that posting your models will hurt your sales or not? I kind of agree with Lauren. The people who are on Etsy are there to look to buy it because they don't want to make it necessarily. Not everybody on Etsy, but a large portion are there to shop, not to get ideas and make their own thing.
It really depends on the community you're posting to. I mean, I find that when I post stuff for open source, it drives business for me. It really does. But I also find that some designs that I post, you know, up there take business away. So, I mean, it really depends on what you do and don't post. I think a lot of it has to do with community. I mean, the example of that is if you make a product that not a lot of people that would buy that product have a laser cutter, then yeah, post the files, have fun with it. Use that as marketing tools, things like that.
What do you think, Chelsea, with doing your laser cut jewelry? Would you consider releasing the vector files and stuff that you use to do the cutting?
I don't know if I would just release them. I would maybe sell the files.
It's another avenue that we could talk about too, selling your design file.
Yeah, I would potentially sell the design files, but I don't know that I would just release them. I mean, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like most of the designs so far that I've done are easy enough that if you really wanted to like do it yourself anyway, you could probably just design it yourself. So yeah, but I think that if I were to do that, I would probably sell the files, not just put them out there for free.
Yeah, so selling the files might be okay, because I just one further question I would have is, have you ever sold international? And you know, because shipping costs internationally will maybe double the price of the object. So if somebody would like to have my jewelry and shipping costs would be too much, maybe I would accept selling them the file so they can do it themselves. But who does have a casting machine and the knowledge I have to add that? Yeah, maybe in my case not so easy. But what about you guys? Have you conducted lots of sales internationally, and did you have this discussion? Oh my goodness, this is so expensive shipping it to them.
I was actually just talking to Heather about that today, because I initially am just opening it up, my Etsy store, for US shipping only, because I'm honestly like, I'm scared of how much, I mean, as little as these weigh, like, I mean, they're literally like two ounces. So I'm sure that they wouldn't be that much for international shipping, but I hadn't looked into it. And just the thought worries me more than shipping only US. But I'm worried it's going to hurt my shop more if I don't ship internationally. So I was actually just talking to her about that today, potentially looking into what it would cost compared.
Yeah, I looked at your shop and thought about buying some earrings, and then I thought, okay, she's not selling internationally yet, and if she would, it maybe would be too expensive for me, because I have to not only pay the shipping, but also customs and handlings to send it where I live. It's totally crazy. So it's not only the shipping, but you have to take these other things also in thought. And so this is why I asked you if you're going to bring some stuff with you to Merv.
Yeah, I will definitely. Yep.
I'll tell you this about international shipping. We don't do it because there's the problem with chargebacks. There's the problem with returns. There's the problem with all that support stuff, because you have to worry about all that international legalese. So when we get international customers, what we tell them to do is use reshippers. They're fairly cheap services, and there's always a reshipper for every specific country. And I would recommend that to any Etsy shop or anything like that. Just get your customer to sign up with a reshipper for whatever country they're in. And for you, you've now shipped it to an American address, and you have all your buyer protection and seller protection to that American address. And they get a company that specializes in import and export for that specific country, and all that paperwork and all that in between, so that you have nothing to worry about and that customer has nothing to worry about. The only thing it does for you as a business is if they have a problem with that product, or they claim it wasn't shipped to them or got lost in shipping or anything like that, you only have to send more product to that American address. You don't have to deal with return postage back and forth internationally and all the custom stuff.
Could you share that address or some of those addresses, please? Because that would be interesting, maybe for all of us here and also for the guys listening.
They vary a lot. I only have, as weird as it sounds, I only have Russian ones, but if you just look up reshipper, It's weird. For some reason, I'm very popular in Russia. But just look up shippers, RE shippers, and you'll find up a million listings close by to you. Delaware is a very popular state for reshippers because we don't have any sales tax. So that's why Delaware became the state to do it in. And I say I'm popular with the Russians because I have 2 Russian reshippers in buildings adjacent to mine.
I ship internationally. And Etsy gives you an awesome deal on shipping charges internationally. Make sure to get shipping insurance on it to make sure. I also don't accept returns. So that whole side of things, if something ends up broken in shipping, I just ship them a new one. Do I end up having to eat the cost of it? Yes. If I got insurance on it and the box was damaged, no, I don't have to. Then the post office eats that cost. And to be honest, you should always get insurance. Etsy charges minimal prices on shipping insurance up to $100. I think it's 80 cents, which is way cheaper than it is at the post office.
Yep.
And that can save you. It saved me twice now, where packages just went completely missing and the post office after months still couldn't find them. And I had already sent new product to the customer and then I got my money back. So international shipping, it can be a little intimidating. I had to go to my postmaster and have him explain to me and make sure I did everything right because I was petrified, especially my first one was to ship to Japan, which was terrifying. The biggest downside I found is if it's a country that uses characters like Japan, the shipping address often comes in not in English and Etsy will not accept it. So you have to then ask the customer. And the easiest way around that I found is to take a screenshot of what Etsy wants you to fill in and send that to your customer and they will give you exactly what Etsy is looking for without any questions. Because that's hit me twice now.
The insurance is a good point, Lauren. The very first order we ever had on Etsy arrived damaged. And we didn't have insurance. Fortunately, the buyer was cool about it. She fixed it, and I ended up actually giving her a coupon on Etsy for the full amount as a refund for it. Just it was our first sale, you know. You want that to go off well. And when I got the message that it arrived damaged, I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" Fortunately, she took a little bit of super glue and fixed it, but that was.
Yeah, it's just for the minimal price that Etsy charges, you're kind of dumb not to, because 80 cents is not going to make or break your profit. And if it does, then you have priced things very wrong. So 80 cents, just do it and you've saved your ass, you know, for God knows how much. It's
worth it every time. We've had, you know, $7,000 printers damaged in shipping or get lost. That's a little harder to swallow, but yeah. I haven't want to deal with that. I will tell you this though, if you're shipping, it's not uncommon for a lost package to all of a sudden become found 6 months later. And if it does become found and it finds its way back to you, besides the moral high ground, you should always go, even if the FedEx or the post office paid you out for it, you need to go back to them and say, I got the product back, here's your money back. File with them, because besides the moral reasons of it, they keep track of how many of your packages get lost, and after a while they literally just stop honoring your insurance if you get too many lost.
They have not found either of mine yet.
Yep.
Mike and LTMW had something, Lauren, you guys were talking a little bit in the chat, and I'd like to kind of bring that into the stream, because this is something that honestly I have the same question. With Etsy, people have the ability to favorite your items or favorite your shop. And I know a lot of times, it's you favorite my shop, I'll favorite yours type of deal for the overall shop. What Mike said, he still has not found an advantage as a store owner to favoriting items and how to follow up with somebody when they do favorite your item to maybe offer them a discount or something like that for favoriting. Because obviously if they favorite it, they're interested in it. We get favorites regularly on our items, but like there's no seller to potential customer conversation that happens there. How do you guys that do more sales on Etsy, how do you guys handle that? Or is there anything you can do, I guess?
They do have some tools. I know they recently started offering a abandoned cart discount. And I think the other one is a favorited shop discount, I think. Maybe. I can't. There's two new-ish discounts that they've started offering that you can add, that they will automatically send out a certain amount per month. And the one thing I've noticed from shops that I have favorited is that I do get updates as to when they're releasing new products. And then also Etsy has now started offering the ability to, for customers to request restocks on items. So they favorite the item, they request the restock, and then they get informed when it's no longer sold out. I think to use that, you have to pay for like Etsy Plus or whatever it is. But they do offer more options now than they used to, but I don't think there's as much you can look back at. Like in the chat, we were talking, there's no way to differentiate when somebody favorited your shop. So I don't know if I see that they've got 2 sales. I don't know if those sales came before or after they favorited the shop. I don't know if they favorited and then came back and decided to purchase, or if they made a purchase, favorited, and then made another purchase. I have no way of knowing. So it is a little limited.
I did just look on Etsy's things. I did see that the other day. They now have where you can do targeted campaigns for people, the abandoned cart, and then also recently favorited. So you can send coupons or discount codes or whatever to shoppers who have favorited something or shoppers who leave something in their cart.
I've kind of been lacking with keeping on top of our shop managing on Etsy, so I haven't even seen any of this stuff. So that's good to know.
You know, one question that we're kind of on that I kind of want to ask everybody else out there is, how are you guys handling your marketing and budgets and strategy and everything like that? Because I got to tell you, I sit down weekly with a marketing team, and I stare at like 6,000 different analytical charts and subcategories and all the backtracking and everything like that, and try to come up with mathematical formulas for it. And I just say, screw it. Just throw the money at this week. How do you guys handle it?
I do 100% of my marketing on Instagram. 100%. I do all of my advertising of any kind on Instagram. It is where my largest customer base is. And I think 85% of my sales come from Instagram. So I have kind of learned what that customer base is looking for, and I try my best to make sure that I'm sticking with what I think those people will like. It goes along with me knowing my customer base as well as I do at this point. And then like with promoted posts and things like that, some of them do really well and some of them really don't. It's still kind of hit or miss, but I do incorporate that into my budget monthly as to how much I have to spend on it. And that kind of goes based on how many I've sold over the past month.
Vicky, what about you as far as marketing your stuff?
Okay, I would say the extent of my marketing would go before I do the modeling, where I search and see, are there other things out there? You know, like, we talked before, it's if you have a niche item, it's easier to get attention and easier for people to find it. So like there's no blue-footed booby ornaments, so that is something that's worth my time. And then the other extent of my marketing is just putting in the tags on Etsy. So, that is something where if I didn't have my very fulfilling day job and I really wanted to put forth the effort to grow the business, I can definitely have opportunity for improvement on the advertising and marketing.
Chelsea, you're just getting started in, but what things have you been looking at or done so far?
Yeah, I literally have not even had my shop open for 2 weeks. So far I'm just trying to make sure I post on Instagram at least once a day. I have been posting on my personal Facebook every once in a while, and then on Twitter, and that's basically it so far. So
Yeah,
nothing crazy, but I think I'll keep on the Instagram because I think that if you do tags and stuff correctly, I feel like that's a good place for people to find you. And then maybe some promoted things. I might also potentially, I don't know, I feel like this could be either really good or really bad. Like there's a lot of the, exchange groups in our area, like on Facebook. And I'm like, I'm sure I could sell them on there, but at the same time, I'm not sure I want to go through the hassle of dealing with the people in those exchange groups because those can get a little terrible sometimes. So we'll see.
If you go into the marketplace groups on Facebook and stuff like that for the local listings and stuff, you definitely got to go in there with the mindset that Lauren started out the conversation tonight with. That if somebody tries to lowball you on what you're asking for it or tell you that it's not worth what you're asking,
walk away.
Conversation, walk away, because it will happen. And that's for Jen and I. A lot of what we do ends up being by word of mouth. Like our Etsy shop is there, but it's sort of like the secondhand side of where we're doing stuff. A lot of it is through word of mouth or through Facebook. We have the page for our Etsy shop on Facebook that we post stuff to as we're working on it. A lot of times we'll post kind of update projects because a lot of what we do is one-offs. Like Jen started doing these the epoxy tumblers and stuff. She's doing a couple where she has the idea behind what she wants to do, but it's mainly made to order stuff. So as we're working on stuff, we'll post pictures of it, progress pictures, final pictures of stuff, and that usually leads to the next sale in something. Somebody will message us or they'll comment on it. And usually if somebody comments on our Facebook page, I make a point of sending them a message. Like if they're like, oh, I'd love to have something like that, I make a point of making the contact with that person and just saying, hey, here's a way to contact us if you're interested and there's something that you have in mind, shoot us a message and let us know. And just leave it at that. It's not pushy or anything like that. It's just, here, the channel's open now. You can talk to us if you're thinking about doing something. So we kind of take a different route than I think everybody else does, with not necessarily, well, again, a lot of our stuff is just made to order stuff rather than batching out a bunch of things. Like when I did fidget spinners, we listed them on the yard sale websites and all that stuff back when that was the fad. And Lauren, like you did with Etsy, we sold a ton. I paid off 2 printers with fidget spinners in a matter of 3 months. Right? Mm-hmm. And that was all through Facebook. Nothing online sales besides posting it on yard sale websites on Facebook.
So you guys mentioned it, but I'm curious of what everyone else's opinion on the idea of free shipping and the terminology behind it, because free shipping isn't really free shipping. So how do you guys handle that? And do you like it, or do you find it better to just actually mark the price and pay for shipping separately?
I'll answer that from a buyer perspective to begin with. So eBay was famous for this. You'd find something dirt cheap on eBay. But then and I got bit by this early on with eBay. I bought something on eBay for dirt cheap, and then I looked at the shipping price. And the shipping price was the full price. What I paid was basically the shipping price. Now, that was a drastic difference between those two. One of the things I look at when I'm buying stuff as a buyer is how much can I buy it here, and how much can I buy it somewhere else? Now, like in everybody's case on the panel, it's all, you know, if I'm going to buy a Magic Band bracelet, there's one person to go to for that. If I want that design, there's one person to go to. But when I'm shopping around for something similar, so to speak, I always look at my shipping prices and my buying prices. If it's free shipping, that's great, but Amazon's really easy to buy stuff with free 1-day, 2-day shipping. But I could also go to Walmart and get it the same day for a few dollars less because I'm paying that shipping price in the price. Sometimes, not always. So from a buyer perspective, that's kind of how I look at things.
Well, that's what I was curious about for the other people on the board, since, you know, I'm ultimately selling a lot of stuff that you can buy from other places, but the people that are on this board tonight, they're selling a lot of unique products. Are they finding that it's better to just say free shipping and set the price a little bit higher, or are they finding it better to have a lower price but then charge for shipping?
Yeah.
So I found that, so I do free shipping, but I also offer a coupon code for $5 off if you buy 2 or more. You get $5 off each additional cover that you purchase. And that is because that $5 is the shipping charge, and it's really getting incorporated in, because these little things only weigh like nothing. So I think I can ship 4 for the same price as 1. So the thing that I have found is that my restocks are very, very popular, in the point where I have sold out a couple times in the first 15 minutes. And what people are doing costs me a little bit more, but it's worth it because I end up selling more. Is I've got people who are purchasing and going through the entire sale and then going back and buying another one because they know I'm going to combine the shipping, and that they don't care because it's all free shipping. So sometimes people have put in, I had one person put in an order for 7 of them, and she did it on 3 separate transactions. But she didn't have to worry about, oh, I'm paying extra shipping here, because all the shipping was incorporated and she got her coupon code off of everything. So for me, it has benefited because people can buy the one that they really want immediately and not have to worry about it selling out, and then go back through and get whatever additional ones they want afterwards. So I feel like if you're going to do it, though, you have to incorporate that in your price. Like, I assume up to $5 shipping in each cover, because it's costing me, including shipping insurance, between $360 and $420 now. So as long as I'm incorporating that in my cost, when I'm, you know, taking my own profits, paying myself, and I can actually incorporate that, I do think it's a benefit for the buyer.
Now, I have not experimented with, hey, free shipping on my Etsy shop, but I did have a debacle with a coupon code. You know, I do sell a lot of ornaments that are specific to my town. So one year I had this great idea, like, hey, you know what, if you live in the area, you know, put in this coupon code, you'll get free shipping, and I'll just, you know, meet you somewhere and deliver it. And then I get out of the packing that I don't like doing. Well, you know, it's very clear, Occoquan, Woodbridge, Lake Ridge, I explained it, but then people in Colorado and Kansas started using it. And I reach out to them like, oh, so you're visiting Occoquan? Do you want to meet at this coffee shop? And they were never meeting. They just used it. And so, you know, what I ended up doing was taking that away. And if, you know, like people in my town purchase, I'll message them and, you know, give them a refund, which is quite easy in Etsy to do.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that, because I got to tell you a fun little problem with our store that's very humorous. We would offer on the shipping the idea of local pickup. You know, and people would buy something under $30 and be like, hey, local pickup, no charges for shipping. And I would see orders from, you know, California or Texas. And I email them right afterwards and go, great, when are you picking it up? And where they're trying to get out of shipping charges. And with those people, I literally sit there and I go, all right, no problem. I'll send you a bill for the shipping charges to pay before we can ship it. It cost me more money just to send them that bill, but I have to do it out of principle than the actual shipping at that point, just because they knew what they were doing, you know. So it's just funny you mention that because I know I've seen customers do that and try that. So I understand.
How do you guys get many local pickup items, Lauren? Do you end up getting that at all through Etsy?
I have actually a really good customer that's about 45 minutes north of me, but she's never wanted to do local pickup. In fact, she accidentally double ordered something and I offered to meet her somewhere closer so that she didn't have to send it back to me. And she's like, oh no, it's not a big deal. And she just sent it back instead. So, but I do have a couple. I think there's one other one in Portland. So she's about 50 minutes north of me that buys often, but no, rarely. I mean, I think that's mostly because why offer a local pickup if I'm still going to offer free shipping? It just doesn't. To be honest, my free shipping is so convenient. Even like dropping things off at the post office, I always wait for my receipt because I want proof that it was dropped off and that it was scanned. More so that I just have the proof. I also use that to calculate my mileage at the end of the year because I just count my receipts and multiply that by my 5 miles to go to the post office. But my postmaster is awesome and will just take my whole bag and get to it when he has a chance and then put my receipt in my P.O. box for me.
Yeah,
So,
that's what our ladies do. We don't have mail delivery here in our town, and I get to walk to my post office. So when people buy from me, they help me fight a sedentary lifestyle. But yeah, if they're really busy, they'll just scan my stuff and put the receipt in the P.O. box for later.
yeah, it was really good at Christmas time because the last thing they wanted was to be scanning my packages while there's 5 people in line behind me. So I would just give them the whole bag and they'd put my reusable bag in my P.O. box along with the receipt.
Nice.
Yeah. I think one new Etsy mistake that I didn't take advantage of is, Etsy can do the shipping labels. And, as Lauren mentioned, you could get a good deal on international shipping. You can also get, some price off on the domestic shipping as well. But for the first year, I was writing out all the addresses and I didn't realize how easy it was to print the shipping labels and, have them scan it. And
I just invested in a thermal printer for labels because I got sick of cutting labels down to size because my packages are, I don't have any right here. They're the little 4x8s. They're these little ones. The normal like half label sheet does not fit. So I had to cut them down and I'm shipping 50 packages every other week. So cutting down 50 labels every other week was just a nightmare. So I just recently bought a thermal printer and it was the best thing I could have purchased. Best $160 I've spent this year.
That's
totally worth it.
I'm still doing our shipping labels in printing it on a piece of paper and using packing tape to completely cover the entire label with packing tape except the barcode. That's how stuff's still going out.
I'll tell you one thing is if you step outside of the Etsy like shipping system, I have fallen in love. The post office and UPS and FedEx all have shipping reports for us. We ship so many packages on a daily basis that if you just go to through their services, I get one piece of paper that I print out every single day that they scan one barcode and it automatically scans every single package that I just gave them. Nice. So when I drop off the post office or they pick up from the truck, they don't have to scan every individual package. They just scan my one report and it automatically updates every single shipment. It is a godsend. It saves so much time. So if you can use it, it's totally worth it. Everybody offers that service.
Nice.
And also, if you don't have Etsy and you still want discounted rates, PayPal offers discounted shipping rates as well. And everybody's got a PayPal account. Yeah. They used to be slightly more than Etsy's prices, but now they're the same from what I've seen.
Oh, that's good to know. That was something I was going to ask you guys if you looked at different shipping options, because like when we did the community logo, I was watching the shipping rates from the different parts coming in from Canada, from the all over the United States. And the one thing that caught my eye was what some people paid for shipping versus other people, talking just in the States alone, through different shipping services. Is there any do you guys pretty much stay in Etsy or PayPal, or have you looked at other shipping services too?
I stick with Etsy because it makes my life easier, and my time is worth that.
Fair enough. Dave, you guys have experience with shipping a lot more now. I know you guys mostly ship with USPS, or US Postal Service. Any input for anybody looking to ship stuff out?
Well, just so you know, UPS and the post office and FedEx don't negotiate rates for you. So I can't walk into the post office and say, hey, I ship 500 packages a day. Can you give me lower rates? They'll always tell me no. But with the quantities that we're shipping, we were actually able to go to another company called ShipRush. That's the company we use. And they negotiated rates out with all the companies. And what they actually do is they negotiate these rates out, and they change on a daily basis. Post office, FedEx, and UPS, their rates change so much. And they give us a system that it looks at every single shipment and says it's going to be cheapest if you ship it FedEx if you want it there by this date with this much insurance. And it compares all the services. So that's how we get picked up. And the only reason why you might see UPS all the time is because for your particular house, UPS is always the cheapest way to get there on time.
Right.
So, but we have to use all the carriers because there's different reasons to use for them for different parts of the country. Example is a 40-pound box east of the Mississippi is still cheaper with the post office, but as soon as I go west of the Mississippi, UPS is cheaper. So it's kind of interesting how that all works.
All right.
There are many services out there that will negotiate your rates based on how many packages you ship.
Good to know. Lauren, with Etsy, you have options for enabling different shipping options. Do you stick with just one, or do you offer multiple choice on your items?
I offer all the options that are available. It's a pass through for me. And to be honest, if somebody wanted me to UPS or FedEx something, there's offices right down the street from where I work, and I could go to them just as easily as I could go to the post office that I go to that's right down the street from work. So it doesn't matter to me how somebody wants me to ship it. I do question people when they want me to ship Priority Express because it only saves 1 day over regular priority, and yet it's 3 times the price. So I often question that, but again, it's a pass-through charge. I don't make anything on shipping. I charge people exactly what I'm getting charged. And so whatever they want, they can have. It doesn't matter to me one way or another. But I'm also only shipping 50 packages every other week. I'm not doing the amount that anybody else would be, that a large shop would be doing. 50 packages is not that big of a deal.
Excuse me, guys. I believe because here it's 6 o'clock in the morning now, and I urgently have to go back to sleep. And just wanted to say goodbye.
It was nice seeing you, Kat. I'm glad that you joined.
It would be so nice if we girls could hang out maybe once again in the near future. It's so much fun. Yeah, I haven't seen you all for a while, and then just giving all you a big hug and see you soon, hopefully. Yeah, I will watch you guys tomorrow.
Kat, do you want to tell everybody where they can find you on social media and YouTube and stuff?
Oh, I'm everywhere, just Kat 3D or Koshiba. So yeah, still growing. I'm not uploading YouTube videos so often, but maybe more on Twitter. Okay.
See you,
bye
Kat.
bye. Bye bye.
I'll tell you what. With that, we are just about to hit the 2-hour mark. So why don't we go ahead and do outros quick? And we can keep talking if you guys want to. I haven't seen Lauren's been answering a lot of questions in the chat. I haven't seen anything directed necessarily at the entire panel.
There was one more question that Chuck had that was really good, which was how many days, weeks, months worth of product do you print ahead of time?
Oh, yeah, I completely forgot about the whole restock thing when you said about that.
Yeah. I mean, other than that, that was the only other question that I had seen that we hadn't addressed yet.
Do you mind talking about what you meant at the beginning about restocking your shop and everything? I have to make a real quick call for work because I'm on call. Do you mind kind of like taking over a little bit and talking about what you do there, answering Chuck's question and answering what you mean by restocking your shop?
Yeah. So my shop is all ready to ship. So everything that I have right back there is my remaining stock of everything from my last restock. And what I mean by restock is every other week I will relist everything in my shop. So I will make it nice and full again with all brand new products. And I do that the same time every other Monday. So that if somebody is waiting for something, they have a specific date that they're waiting for. The reason I do that is because I have to make things in batches because a lot of them are multi-material prints, which means I'm filling the bed full of as many as I possibly can. But then I also have to paint them, glitter them, resin coat them, make them look all nice and pretty and take pictures of everything before I can list it in the shop. So doing everything in batches makes it a lot easier. So I basically can do up to like 80 to 90 every other week in the shop. So I'm basically working on it every 2 weeks to answer your question, Chuck. About every 2 weeks, I'm rotating between 90 products. And that's the max I can do. I did one where I was at 102, and I will never do that again because I felt like I was going to jump out of a window. It was terrible. And that's another good thing to note. Know your limits and don't push them. But I found that doing restock saved my sanity. I was doing everything made to order with my ears when I was doing ears, and the panic that would ensue if I had a jam and I was short on time and this wasn't going to be done in time and I had to wait for the connectors to dry once they were glued. Like, it was just one thing after another that I was always panicking about. And with these, it forced me to do a ready to ship. So I do a restock every other week to save my sanity. And then everything ships out on the same day. I packaged up the 50 orders I had right before this stream in a couple hours, and I will take them to the post office tomorrow, and I don't have to think about them until my next one. So that's what I do with a restock. I do not do long lead times of, you know, you're going to buy it today, but it's going to take 3 to 4 weeks to get to you. Everything will ship within a couple of days.
Nice. I like how you mentioned the sanity because, you know, I know 3D printing is, you know, good for, oh, you can do stuff on demand. But for me, I have also found, particularly because I have a full-time job and I have kids, you know, we're just like one stomach flu or one business trip away from me, like falling off schedule. I do like to print things ahead of time and have them and, you know, not list them on Etsy unless I have the quantity in stock. And yeah, I've found that definitely helps my stress level because all I have to do is ship them.
Yeah, I made the mistake of this last week. I was trying to get on a different every other week schedule. So I did one opening like 8 days later, and the next one, I want to say it was like another 7 or maybe 8 or 9 days later. So I was on the opposite Monday. And that was the worst thing I could have possibly done because I tried to get that full 80 items done in 7 or 8 days instead of the normal 14. And I was in total panic mode. I've been probably a total jerk to poor Nick because I'm just so stressed out. But now it's done, thank God. But yeah, sanity. Save your sanity. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Now our production facility for all of our stuff, I actually list everything, and whenever I make quotes on time frames, I list everything at 50%. So I'm assuming that I'm going to lose half my cutters and half my days of work for every time I make a time quote to somebody. Because stuff breaks, guys call in sick, things happen, and that's a big thing for us. So it's great when I can get stuff done ahead of time, but most of the time it still comes down to the wire when you even project it out at 50%, because you'd be surprised how often something doesn't work.
Every time you need it to work.
Exactly. and the thing is, when you only have one project to do that week, everything prints beautifully. But that one week you've got 60 things to do, nothing works. how it is.
Story of my life.
Yep. Yeah, for anybody who has multiple printers, you know what it's like when you get those days, sometimes weeks, where none of them want to work right. Got 11 printers, and I've had times where all 11 printers don't want to print. It's always when you need something, too. Let's go ahead and do outros real quick, just so we don't get too far past that 2-hour mark, because I want you guys to be able to get any traffic heading your direction from the stream that's possible. So let's start with Chelsea. Everybody, where they can find you.
Okay, I am on Twitter at Chelsea423. Same thing on Instagram, but I do not use that Instagram much. So follow my CCT_designs on Instagram. That is also my Etsy shop name, cctdesigns.etsy.com, and you can check stuff out there. And of course, ChaosCoreTech, Garrett, follow him because he's awesome, but he doesn't do a whole lot. But don't worry, he's still awesome. We will be back on YouTube soon, hopefully. And yeah, keep an eye out for more earring designs. Hopefully within a week or so. I'm going to go down and work on some new stuff after this. So
Dave, you're up.
Hey, David Randolph over at Printed Solid. You find us on Twitter at Printed Solid, Facebook Printed Solid, Instagram Printed Solid, printedsolid.com. In case you haven't guessed it, just pretty much Printed Solid on any social media platform will eventually get to me. So we keep it pretty simple. You know, check us out. We'll be at Murph, and we have all sorts of fun stuff coming up. And yeah, that's us.
All right, Lauren.
I'm Lauren from Abuzz Designs. You can find me at Abuzz Designs just about everywhere. Abuzzdesigns.com or abuzzdesigns.etsy.com will both take you to the same place. My next restock is on March 18th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Like I said, some of my things do sell out rather quickly. Last time it was in 15 minutes. So if you are interested in something, get there early and set your alarms.
Vicky?
All right, I'm Vicky Somma. You can find me on Twitter at TGAW, and you can see my sparsely updated YouTube station at TGAW3D. And my Etsy shop is Vicky TGAW.
And I'm Matt from How I Do It. Twitter.com/countrycowboy, YouTube.com/How I Do It. And of course, every other week on the Friday night hangouts for the US stream, I'll be organizing along with Chris Boleski's help, getting topics set up. And we have quite a few guests that we're working on coming up. We're looking at doing a cosplay one at the beginning of April. We're going to next week. I don't know if the EU stream has a topic picked out for the 15th, but there will be the European stream at 3 p.m. Eastern, 20 UTC on March 15th. The next US stream is March 22nd, 10 p.m. Eastern, 2 or 3 a.m. UTC. I forget which it is. That one does not currently have a topic picked for. One of the streams that we have upcoming in May, the first week of May, we're going to have Jimmy DeResta on to talk about bringing 3D printing into his already existing workshop and integrating it into his workflow. And Chuck Hellebuck's going to be on as well for a guest with that, because he's been working directly with Jimmy to get him set up with his first 3D printer, which technically it's not his first 3D printer, but it's the first one that he's actually successfully using. So he's been given a couple in the past. So Chuck's done a lot of good work with Jimmy, getting him set up over the last couple of months. So we're going to talk to him and get the perspective a little bit of somebody who's not new to equipment, not new to CNC, but new to 3D printing, and how he's going to use it in his workshop. If you guys have any topic suggestions that you'd like to see us talk about on the streams. Tonight's topic is one that gets requested pretty frequently, and I think we're probably going to hit on this once a year. We always end up, seems like this week actually, once a year, we end up having this conversation. So if you have more questions, you can find all of our guests. Their links will be in the description. I have to get a couple of people's information and links to put in the description. But by tomorrow morning, you should be able to see all that. And be sure to follow, favorite their shops, follow them on Twitter, YouTube. Us tonight. And if the panel would like to stick around and keep talking, and if there's questions from the chat, we'll keep going. If you guys want to end it here, we can end it here. So what do you guys think? Is there anything that we did not talk about that you guys want to? Or Chelsea, starting up your shop, do you have questions for Lauren and Vicky about your shop?
So far, no, but I may have questions for Lauren for international shipping. So
yeah, let me know. It's not as complicated as it seems. It is a little nerve-wracking, but it really wasn't as bad as I anticipated. The only thing was just when I got the Japanese address and it was not written in English, and I was like, what do I do? But I reached out to the girl and just did a screenshot. If you click on like the address section to change the address, it will pop up the dialog box of the actual things they're looking for that country. And I just sent that screenshot directly to the customer, and she just filled in the blanks for me, which just made it really easy. The first time I did it, though, I was like, she didn't tell me what I need to put where. So giving the screenshot makes it a little easier because they can see exactly what you need to fill in. But it really ended up not being as bad. I've only done maybe 6 or 7 international orders at this point. A couple to Japan. But they haven't gone poorly.
Lauren, you're popular in the chat tonight. Thank you for kind of keeping the questions answered over there.
I'm trying.
Anything that you answered tonight in the chat that we didn't talk about that you think is relevant?
I don't think so. I think we were hitting everything. The only one was Chuck's, which we got to. I think for the most part, somebody did bring up Etsy's fees. Etsy does charge a fee on your shipping charges, which in theory, if I were to not have my shipping charges included in my fees, because I do free shipping, but had I broken that out separately, Etsy charges you for the same fee, regardless of if it's the product or the shipping. And that's a recent change for them. Basically, a bunch of people were doing lesser priced items and then overcharging on shipping so that they were making more money on it. And Etsy realized that and said, no, you can't do that. So now you're paying on the whole thing. To me, it's such a minuscule charge. And if I were to be paying with PayPal or someone else, you're still going to get charged fees. So to me, it's not worth my time and effort to try and figure out the best way to make an extra 3 cents. You know, like you kind of have to look at it and say, where is your time worth and where do you want to spend your time? And I don't want to spend it looking for lower fees. I don't care enough, you know, and maybe if we were talking thousands in fees, that would be a different story, but we're not. So fees are just part of the game. The only way you're not going to be paying those is if you have your own website. And even then you're usually going to be using Shopify, which means you're paying Shopify the fee instead. The only way you're not is if you're doing WooCommerce, but then you're paying for WooCommerce. So no matter what, you're paying it. The question is, how much time do you want to put into it?
Yeah, the only way you're not going to pay a fee is if you're doing cash sale.
Right.
Somebody's got to pay for processing a credit card payment.
Right. And most places that's going to be at least 3%, you know, and if you're paying 3%, why do I care if I'm paying 5% to Etsy for it? I really don't.
Right.
You know, to me, that extra 2% is not going to make or break anything.
Eddie Moser asked for Lauren that he said he was looking at printing some of 3D Maker Noob's heart faces, and it was cheaper to ship from Malta than to ship in the U.S. And he was asking if you've seen that with your international shipping.
I've seen where I've ordered things from like Prusa, and it's been cheaper than if I were to ship it US, because sometimes you've got discounted rates internationally. So sometimes that is true.
Some countries get subsidies to ship to the United States, so they can actually get far cheaper shipping to us than I can to the next state over.
Yep.
And if you guys are you guys okay with going off topic? Usually the 2-hour mark, anything's fair game if you keep going. Are you guys okay with questions from the chat that are different than making profit?
Doesn't matter to me.
Okay. I saw Chelsea shaking her head yes. Tony Ryan asked Lauren if your MMU2 is working better, and have you made peace with it misbehaving?
I've figured out some of its nuances a little bit better, so I wouldn't. It's not fixed. I need to do some of the firmware updates, and I need to play around with it. Basically, what was happening is the selector was moving all the way to the left and not leaving a slight gap. And that was making the filament jam into the front of the selector instead of going through the hole. So every time it would look like it was going to print fine, and then it would not. So I basically was rigging it by sticking a little part of a tweezers in there to make my space. And it works fine if I do that. So I need to update the firmware on it, and I'm sure it will be fine. But I have at least now learned how to fix it temporarily.
Now, you just have the MMU 1 and 2, correct?
I have the MMU 2. Because I had the 1 and I upgraded to the 2.
Oh, you upgraded. Okay. I thought maybe you had both. No. You don't have a palette, right?
No.
Okay. I was going to ask if you had any experience back and forth. I've been playing with a palette here the last couple of weeks. And it's funny you said about you go look at the print and it looks like it's going to work, walk away, and that's when it fails. Staying with the palette.
My only complaint is that when there's an error on the MMU, it doesn't beep at me or anything. So sometimes I'm in the other room and I think it's printing fine, only to come in here and realize that it hasn't been printing for an hour because the filament unloaded poorly, and I need to adjust that, which is fine. I can do it, but I didn't know, and I was in the other room for 2 hours.
Yeah, I've been thinking the same thing with the palette, because I made my own hub for the palette too, and instead of using their Canvas hub, but I actually built an Octoprint server out of an old desktop. And the palette does this thing, it does pinging, where throughout the print, it'll check with Octoprint to see what the percentage of the print is completed versus where it's at in its transitions, and it'll make micro adjustments to it. So, you know, like if you're not extruding as fast as it thinks you were because of the slicer settings, say you're switching between protopasta and PLA, different temperatures and stuff, they extrude a little bit differently. It'll make micro calculations to adjust for that. I have come down here so many times where the print is just like, it started out perfect. Transitions were great. And then next thing you know, something changed. It under extruded a little bit or something. And the entire print from there to the end of it is completely screwed up. And it's like, you're doing these pings. You know what percentage you're at. You even know where you're at with the G code. Why don't you pop up a message on Octoprint and say, hey, we think something might be screwed up. You might want to go check this and save your plastic.
Yeah.
Like, still has room for improvement.
Yeah, I mean, at least my error is not doing that. It just sits there, cooling down, sitting there, doing nothing for 2 hours.
Which just lost time that it could have been continuing on. Yeah.
Exactly.
What's everybody working on? Vicky, it's been a while. What are you up to?
Lately I've been doing classes and presentations. So I had a series of classes at a local library, and then I'm meeting a local makerspace just got an M3 ID. So I'm going to meet with them later this month and talk about the machine and also Simplify 3D. And then the Maker Faire Nova proposals are due by March 29th. So I'm still like brewing a few different ideas of what I want to put on my proposal. This will be my 5th Nova Maker Faire, so I want to make it good.
I saw they moved. I thought we were going to miss Nova this year.
Yeah, they moved it to June this year.
That's awesome. That means we'll get to make it down for that too.
Yeah.
Chelsea, ChaosCoreTech, or Team ChaosCoreTech, has been kind of quiet up until the last few weeks here with the new Etsy shop. You said Garrett's planning on getting back to doing YouTube videos and releasing new models.
Yeah, so we were gone for a while. In case anybody didn't know, we were mainly just like dropped off the face of the earth because one of our dogs tore his ACL. So that was super awesome. Surgery and very long recovery time, and he's almost back to normal if he wasn't so spazzy. I don't know where he's at right now, but laying back here in a ball. If he wasn't so spazzy all the time, I wouldn't worry about him so much, but he likes to run around like a crazy dog on slick wood floors, and I'm pretty sure that's how it happened in the first place. So we're super paranoid about that. But that's where we were for months. And yeah, we will be coming back. But I think that the channel is going to be taking a different direction slightly. Garrett has planned, so
it'll take some time to get there, though.
It's going to take some time to get there. We have a couple things to finish and post, like this poor little guy who is still not
He's so cute.
Together. There's a few projects that we have to finish up, but then I think he's slowly going to transition to something a little bit different for the channel. So hopefully everyone will like it. It's still going to be like involving 3D printing stuff, but also involving more other things. I don't want to step on toes, so we'll just leave it there for now.
I want to spill the beans, huh? What about you, Lauren? Besides shipping out 50 packages every 2 weeks, what are you up to?
That's basically it. I'm either at work, my day job, which has also gone absolutely crazy as we're opening a second showroom. So between that and when I'm home, I'm usually in the studio if it's not Thursday. Thursday is the only day I really have off. Otherwise, it's chaos in here. Glittering things, painting things, printing things, resin coating things, you name it. It's crazy. But that's basically it. I've got a lot of projects. Since I've been learning resin, I've been learning how to make my own resin top for my coffee table. So I'm hoping that will actually be done in time for Earth this year. That's my goal. So fingers crossed I can actually do it.
You know what? That made me think of it. I was hoping back when Earth came around that you were going to bring the coffee table along, and you didn't bring it, right?
No. There's too much other stuff that we were worried about and trying to get it there. And I knew that we weren't going to be standing at our tables for very long to be able to talk to people about it. So it kind of seemed pointless, and I still didn't have a top for it. So I now, working with resin, understand it more and am a little more comfortable making my own top. So I'm learning how to do that right now on the side when I have a free moment.
You guys are coming to Murph. Vicky, are you coming to Murph?
It's looking not so good. My husband has a business trip, so it would be me and the 2 kids. So I think it might be better to stay home.
Who all is going to Murph? I know this answer, but for everybody watching the stream.
We are. We're going to go to Phoenix first. We're doing a piggyback trip. We're going to go visit my family, and then we're going to go to Murph.
Nice. Chelsea and Garrett, you guys are coming, right?
Yes, we will be there. Yep.
I know Dave will be there. Pretty Solid will be there. Jen and I, and Dixie for sure, possibly Bailey too. Which actually surprised me. It was just gonna be Jen and I, and then Dixie said she wanted to come. So it's gonna definitely be Dixie, which is cool. I'm happy she wants to go. I thought last year she didn't have much interest in it, so that's exciting. Let's see. Chelsea, there was a question in there you can ask Garrett then from Eddie. Oh, never mind. He saw it.
Yep.
Do you guys have anything else, or do we want to wrap it up there tonight? I think it was good, informative conversation for making for profit.
I'll end on one note. Don't do it if you're not passionate about it, because it takes a lot of hard work. Like way more hard work than you ever realize. And there are more moments where you want to quit than you would ever think would happen.
Yeah.
So you really have to have that passion to drive you, or else you're not going to succeed.
Yeah. It's way more fun to make stuff for yourself. It's way less fun to make it for somebody else.
Well, there's just more pressure added. You know, you've got customers you don't want to let down, and you're trying to design new things and come up with new things. And when they fail over and over again, you get really disappointed, you know, and then, you know, heaven forbid something breaks and you have to replace it on the fly. And there's a lot of pressure. And if your heart's not in it, you're not going to go far.
There's a lot of overthinking too.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know, like even like little simple bird design, I'll be looking at it. I'm like, I don't know, maybe this isn't good enough to ship. And I have my mom who lives with me, and you know, very often I'm like, hey, do you think this is okay? And she's like, what's the problem with it? Like, I could see all the flaws, but you know, she can't. Most people can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, be careful for that.
Was that Nick in the background?
Yeah. He's playing video games with his friend.
Okay.
All right. Well, I guess we'll end it there, and we'll see everybody back here for the US stream in 2 weeks. Or you can catch the European stream next week on Friday at 3 p.m. Thanks, everybody, for joining the Friday night hangout. Thanks again to all of our guests and our panel. For everybody watching, be sure to follow, like, subscribe, favorite, whatever options you got for all of our guests tonight and panel. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you guys again next time.